Happy Monday. Is that going to count for an intro? That'll work. Hi, I'm Jersey Droz, cartoonist and teaching artist. If you are new to this channel, what am I doing today? I am working on some analog inks of an experiment, another experiment in drawing on penciling digitally in Clip Studio Paint, printing it out onto watercolor paper, inking it up, then taking it back into Clip Studio Paint for painting. And I actually have the pencils up for this one. This is what I worked on Saturday. I only had about an hour and change to do it, so it's a little sloppy, a little loose in places. Right? And then I printed it out onto, like I said, watercolor paper. I'm trying to decide which one I want to use. I printed out two versions. And, I might just do this one. I think this print came out better because, like, if you look closely at my printer, kind of choked on the paper as it was printing it out, and so you can see where this goes. So those lines get like overlapping because like it like sort of grabbed and stopped and printed twice over the same line. So the images are kind of broken. Like Baron von Bear's head is shaped kind of weird. I can compensate for that. I just wonder if this one is the better one to go with. I just noticed this now. I think I like this one better. I could just pencil in that ghost real quick. That's why I made a second printout, because I added this ghost. I thought one more little ghost swooping in. But I can just go ahead and do that with some blue line pencil right now. And voila. A little different than this one, but you know what? It's okay too. Let's fan that out a little bit more. Okay. What am I inking with? There's the usual suspects. We've got a couple of felt tip pens for doing some of the background work and I don't know, things that are too tiny for me to do with brush. And then I've got two brush pens here. And then if calamity happens, what is it? Uniball Sino white gel pen covering up errors. So I guess there's nothing for it but to dive in and do it. I'll keep this on the side. This is that bum printout. I'm going to leave it aside so I can use this for drying out my brushes when I need to. Okay, here we go. And I'll think aloud about making comics while I do this. What is this? This is the 0.3. Well, I guess I'll start with that. So when I was drawing this, I was watching a movie, Saturday Night Monster movie, and the subject for it came pretty quickly. I really didn't know what I was going to be drawing until I sat down to do it. So I quickly looked up just like a couple reference images. I looked up a Victorian chair. I looked up some Victorian lamps. And then looked up like a Victorian end table, and I just quickly referenced them and sketched them in. I mean, it literally was something where, because I'm trying to do all of these experiments with a ticking clock, not to race, not to, uh, you know, get my best time, but I am looking for, like, can I speed things up to be more efficient? And that too, I'm not trying to be like, oh, I want to be the most productive widget maker. But just this stuff takes time. These comics take a long time to make, and I'm just trying to find a way to like get good quality work as quickly as I can, so as not to uh, burn myself out doing this. That saucer's not good. I got to fix that. Saucer, you getting fixed. Really hard to see some of these lines. I drew them really thin. It's something I got to get better at when I'm doing further experiments. What do I got going on there? So if you've tuned into other live streams, you remember probably the Mayan, or yeah, the Mayan city painting that I did. And the lesson learned there was, don't overburden your images with too much detail when you're doing these. I think a secret to getting these things done in time is finding just the right amount, the right balance of how much detail to put in each image. Which is why, big old monster there. That'll speed things along. That line wobble, you see that line wobble on the frame there? I never would have allowed myself to do that like 10 years ago. And even now, it feels a little bit transgressive. I'm thinking about that because when I was cleaning my office a little bit, I found a box of CDs, compact discs, which had backup files for comics that I made like almost 20 years ago. And in it was a comic called PPV. I posted some art from it on my Instagram. Hey, Crystal Media, what am I working on? So I'm inking a piece that I penciled in Clip Studio Paint over the weekend, and there's the penciled piece. Something I quickly sketched out, and now I am inking it with, pens and brush pens on a piece of watercolor paper. But when I was looking at that PPV comic, I was really it's a nice looking comic, but you could tell how like incredibly uptight. Oh, thank you, Crystal Media. But you could tell how like incredibly uptight I was about like making sure my backgrounds were very crisp and clean. So like when I look at this picture frame and I'm like, it's technically right. It's just it's like got wobbly lines on it is all. I think back to like my younger self, you'd be incensed that the old man sold out. And what present me would say to younger me that he would not, I feel confident in saying he probably wouldn't get it. That the wobbly lines have a life to them that your super crisp straight lines don't have. And that's a reasonable choice to make. You can choose to do the more rigid, clean lines that feel more like you're describing an object. I'm trying to draw something here that feels like it's a little fantasy world, just like sort of rippling with life. Oh, you got those watercolor pens, did you? That's great. And you're liking them. I'm glad to hear that. Nice to not have to have a little cup of water to wash out your brushes, right? All right, let's see what I'm doing here. What did I do here? I have been putting off getting an eye appointment until more of us are vaccinated, and I need one so bad. Hey, Dylan draws. Thank you. Hey, Ghost Cinnamon Toast. I'm holding my breath while I draw these lines here. Then I can talk again. Yeah, talking to your past self. I mean, it's this is something because I work with a lot of young people. Remember, a lot of artists who are just beginning. And I'm gonna go ahead and ink this ghost before I do the books. And something I hear a lot of young and beginning artists say is, "Oh, I don't like looking at my old work. Oh, it's so terrible. I hate my old work. Oh, I'm so embarrassed to when somebody sees something I did like 3 or 4 years ago." And like on the one hand, I say to them, "It's like, wow, that's the way it should be, right? Because that means that you're growing as an artist. Your old stuff should be worse than your new stuff. Otherwise, you're not trying very hard." Wouldn't it be a drag if you looked at the stuff you did 3 years ago and it wasn't as good as what you're doing now? Um, or if it was just as good as what you're doing now. But the second thing is like give yourself permission to be, you know, who you were at that point. Like when I look at my old stuff, like yeah, I see less skilled artwork, but I also see like areas where the kid was onto something. So like I said, I came across some of my old artwork recently, and I was having that moment where I realized, oh, I remember where my head was at that time, and I can see what I was trying to do on the page. And sometimes I nailed it, and sometimes I sure didn't. There's nothing nerdy about asking what pens people are using, Dylan Drozdros. These are Pentel color brushes. This is, I think this one's called the Fude, Fude. I got these off of Jet Pens. And it's basically an acrylic brush with an ink chamber here that you could just squeeze to add more ink to the brush. Same thing with this one. You can also find them at Blick. And then these are just Staedtler pigment liners, just felt tip pens, sort of like microns. So actually, what I'm going to do here. Yeah, Jet Pens. Jet Pens is. I'm there with you. You know, I in the last couple of years I moved to Columbus, Ohio, and I live not. I'm within a short drive of a Blick art store, and man, when my wife's like, "Oh, can I talk you into going to Blick?" I'm like, "Can you talk me into it? What are you talking about?" You do not have to have salesmanship to get me to go to an art store and look around. And yes, I have an ongoing Jet Pens um, wish list that I'm currently filling up. So, how do I like Ohio? Well, there is a pretty, like, there are a lot of cartoonists that are moving here. And I think part of it is, I mean, full disclosure, I am acting as the interim executive director of Cartoon Crossroads Columbus. So I have some skin in the game on this and like actual mandate about the job to like encourage more cartoonists to move to Columbus. But I do think that the festival and all the stuff surrounding it in terms of like the venue partners, the Billy Ireland Cartoon Library Museum, like the largest collection of original cartoon art in the world is right here in Columbus. Columbus College of Art and Design, where they have like a comics making program. Um, and then, of course, you have the annual festival. So it's just like the whole town, like, and this is what I said when I first moved here is when I used to go to CXC or Cartoon Crossroads Columbus when I was just an attendee. I remember thinking when I would go home to Ann Arbor, Michigan, I would say like, my gosh, like the whole town celebrates comics, and that was purposefully designed. So yeah, if you go to cartoons.osu.edu, that's the Billy Ireland Cartoon Library Museum. And the amazing thing about it is like they have like the entire collection of original art from Calvin and Hobbes. They have, you know, a Peanuts comic strip in the gallery right next to Todd McFarlane page of Spider-Man and Prince Valiant, and like just basically name your cartoon art and they have it all there. No, actually, if anything, so I'm from Southeast Michigan, Ann Arbor, which is just outside of Detroit, by like 45 minutes outside of Detroit. And so I was used to lake effect weather every winter. So like we would get snow, like we'd get like in April, 2 feet of snow. Here in Columbus, it is noticeably milder, much milder. Like we had basically one bad winter storm this year, and I kept looking over my shoulder, going like, "Is that it? Is that all we got?" So you shrink from mild frost. Well, then it might be a little too intense for you. What am I doing here? What was I trying to do? Oh, there's a book there. And then there is a little ram's head bookend that I drew there. Yes, and Lazuli Arts was saying weak winters. I happen to know that they once lived in the Upper Peninsula. And if for those of you who have never been to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, like you're basically in Siberia. Beautiful Siberia. Yeah, I used to live in Phoenix, Arizona, which would be, I guess, comparable to inland California. And the thing that I quickly noticed was that I lost all track of what the heck seasons were. because it was always just like kind of hot and really hot, kind of hot, really hot, and like there was no, well, there was the orange blossoms, I guess, but like otherwise there wasn't like these huge periods of like seasonal change. That I did here. Get my bigger pen out. I gotta get this done fast, Jersey. Stop messing around and just draw. Yeah, go cinnamon toast. That is exactly what I discovered after living in Phoenix. That was the thing that my wife and I were saying. Is like, it's like I don't even know. Did that happen in October? Or did that happen in May? We started and we were only there for 5 years, and already we were losing track. And we were young. It's not like we had like we were having senior moments or anything. We're like, okay, yeah, I think we rely on the changing of the seasons a little bit. That's a spider leg. I'm gonna draw this spider now. Tangent alert. Yeah, it is quite hot in Phoenix. People always say like, "Oh, but it's a dry heat." I'm like, "Yeah, it's still like opening up an oven." One of the summers we were there, I got up to 117. And while I did get used to it, in the sense that like I remember the morning when I realized I acclimated to living there. I was waiting for the bus to go to work, and it was 40 degrees that morning because it was in the middle of winter. And I remember I had a wool coat on, and I was shivering. I was shaking with cold. And I thought, Michigander chattering his teeth over 40-degree weather. Like when I lived in Michigan, it was like 40-degree weather, like in the springtime. That's when all the college kids like go out and sunbathe. Nah, it's more like 60 to be fair. But yeah, no joke. I actually do a unit in my oh yeah, no, Phoenix did strip the Ann Arbor from me because when I moved back to Michigan and I was in Ann Arbor, my first winter in Ann Arbor, I remember it was like it wasn't that bad. It was like I want to say it was maybe like 30, 35, 36 degrees. It was above freezing, but it was really windy. And I had a heavy coat on, and a strong wind hit me, and I screamed involuntarily. And I was with my little brother who never left Michigan, and he just laughed and laughed at that. It took me a long time to get used to the cold again. Yeah, Columbus does seem to be like I wouldn't say a happy medium. It's still much colder than Phoenix, but where isn't? But I'll tell you something else. Is like it also made me just fall in love with the desert. Like my wife and I actually vacationed in Death Valley, California, a couple years back, and we were like, "Oh my gosh, I just miss this so much." my goodness, come on. How far am I? Yeah, I'm 25 minutes in. I am not very far. I've got to get over myself and just get in here and draw. And if that's all I get for my experiment today is a little bit more self-knowledge, so be it. Yeah, that is pretty cool. When we were in Death Valley, I'll tell you, like at night, because there isn't that much light. I mean, there's next to no light pollution out there. There's really just we're just like this little sort of resort hotel in the middle of the desert. And so we went out to some of like the lookouts at night, and it was just absolutely black. And then like the skies, like it looked like outer space. You saw all the stars. So pretty. But it was weird to be in that kind of like real darkness. Okay. Did I get all the furniture? I got some books to do yet. Blast it. Why did I draw so many books? Here's the cartoonist dilemma. The thing I'm really enjoying about doing these experiments is I'm learning really quickly how drawing digitally almost invites me to add unnecessary detail. I don't know if anybody else has run into this, but the fact that I can pinch to zoom on my screen and just keep on drawing details, like what I'm doing right now, I wouldn't have done this if I were penciling on the paper. Oh, well, I'm glad that this is helpful. When I was a little kid, I used to watch the Bob Ross painting show on PBS. And I remember not understanding why it was so relaxing. I mean, part of it is his voice, right? I mean, that's like a big part of it. But I remember thinking, like, I'm just watching a person draw. Why would that be relaxing to me? Okay. Did I get all the background line work done? I think so. Let's dive in here and get some big inks done. Oh, I was going to fix Bearman Bear's face. Blast. Everybody's like, oh, this is relaxing. I'm like, yeah, but I'm super stressed out. That eye there. Let's do his eyes with the small pen. Do you do your pencils digitally and then print blue line like that? And then traditionally, yes, that's exactly right. I pencil using an app called Clip Studio Paint. And I use brushes by a guy named Ray Frendon. I have an affiliate link if you want to try out his brushes. It won't cost you anything extra, but I'll get a piece of the action. That's at brushes.jdros.com. But I use some of his dry brushes that I've modified a little bit for my own taste to use as pencils. I pencil and Clip Studio Paint, and then I turn the ink lines into 30% cyan. But Jersey, Clip Studio Paint doesn't support CMYK. I know. I've just found the RGB values for 30% cyan. And then I print it out onto, this is just Canson watercolor paper. Like very inexpensive watercolor paper. It has a little bit of a tooth to it, which I like. It adds a little bit of texture to my brush pens. So I print it out, and then I ink with the brush pens. Then I scan it, take it back into Clip Studio Paint. And if you look at some of my past streams, as a matter of fact, last Thursday's stream was me doing watercolors in Clip Studio Paint. Because Ray Frendon has some pretty great watercolor brushes, the best I've found. And so this has been an ongoing experiment as I think about the next comic I want to do. I'm trying to figure out, like, how can I do it as quickly as possible while still retaining good quality images. I don't want it to look rushed. I want it to look like it was thoughtfully done this way, but I'm trying to find a way to do it thoughtfully, but also adding some speed to it. I think there's some cartoonists watching right now who will back me up on this. This stuff takes entirely too long sometimes. Tangent. When I was first starting, and again, this goes back to my days doing that PPV comic I was talking about a little while ago. It would take me anywhere between 6 to 15 hours to draw a page, from pencils, inks, to tones or colors and whatever. Yeah. See, Lazuli Art knows what I'm talking about. Yeah, it takes entirely too long. So, and again, I've been quoting this a lot as I've been doing these experiments, but it was inspired by a tweet by Chris Schweitzer, another brilliant cartoonist, who said that, you know, like, advances aren't big. We have to make this money last. Or if we speed up our work, aim for quality with an eye on speed, then we'll raise our hourly rate. And I feel like speed does come with practice. The act of just doing this all the time will make you really good at it. But even then, you can eke out a little bit of extra speed afterwards. So I ran an experiment 2 years ago for Inktober where I tried to put together a graphic novel pitch in the 30 days of the challenge. And I wound up finding a way to get a 6-panel comic page, pencils, inks, colors, letters, in 3 hours. And once I hit that, I was like, okay, that should be the standard for me now. If I can keep that up all the time. I would hear stories about people like Jack Kirby who could draw like pencil 5 pages a day. Like, that's inhuman. Maybe it's not. Maybe he found ways to optimize things. Well, and the way I did them, everybody, was very much like how I'm doing this. I penciled digitally. I learned to live with less than perfect penciling. I didn't try to noodle and fix everything. I just tried to get the main idea across. And then I printed it on a Bristol and I inked it just like this, which is why I'm trying to get this done. How long have I been going? 36 minutes? Yeah, so actually I'm in pretty good shape to get this done in less than an hour. I also remember reading or hearing something about Fabian Nicienza, who was the writer of many of the X comics in the 90s, X-Men, X-Force, X-Factor, whatever. I didn't really follow them, but I was familiar with his name because those were very popular books at the time. And he supposedly said, he was a writer, he said, you get one panel to show off, one panel to really strut your stuff as an artist, and the rest of them should be journeyman panels. In other words, they should just be about getting the idea across, using your craft to communicate clearly. What size is this paper? That's a fair question. This is, I think this is 9 by 11? I think that's right. This is 9 by 11 Canson watercolor paper. But see, again, talking about speed, here I am just silhouetting out this crow or raven. And Lazuli Arts, who, if they're still here, is a master at drawing ravens. You know all the cheats I did to get to this, right? Like you can see how much shorthand I'm using just to get the idea across, right? Well, I think what that Fabian quote points to is how there's multiple jobs happening at the same time on a comics page. Is that you're, I'll only speak for myself. My job as a cartoonist is to achieve clarity, to communicate images, to communicate this, or to create images that communicate the story effectively and clearly so that nobody's confused, unless confusion is the point. And then there's another part of it, which is, yes, showing off that I know how to draw things, like creating art that arrests and makes people stop and notice and enjoy, right? So when I say show off, I don't just mean it's about me. Like I'm always thinking about my audience when I'm making art, and sometimes I'm making art specifically because I want them to just feel like they're enjoying the beauty of something, how cool something looks, right? But that's not always the job. That's one of the jobs. I always feel bad when I'm reading comics and I'm hurriedly moving from one panel to another to think of the time and the sort of effort of getting, setting a scene an artist takes, and my eyes just skim over it quickly. Yeah. So going back to my early days when I was first being published, and like it would take me 15 hours to draw a page, I remember somebody brought me a statistic that said something like the average comics reader spends about 3 seconds a panel, if that. And I just remember feeling just crestfallen, just destroyed by that thought. Like I spent 15 hours for 3 seconds of enjoyment. I'm like, okay, but here's my pushback on that years later. How many of you have read a comic twice, 3 times? How many of you have looked at a panel and really sat with it for a long time because it was such a meaningful image? It was such an arresting moment of the story. Even though most of us read comics, relatively speaking, very quickly. You know, it's when it grabs you good. And this is also something I wind up saying to my students. Um, is, it's like they'll say, "Oh, how long did that take to make?" And I'm like, well, a graphic novel takes about 1.5 to 2 years. And they go, "Oh," because like they're like 12. Like that's like a sixth of their life I've just described, right? Um, and I say, well, that is a long time, but you can think about it this way: that's a long time I get to spend thinking about drawing. I get 2 years to think about drawing these characters that I really love. So I mean, there's multiple ways of looking at it. I think sometimes we get a little focused on the shipping part, which is an important part. It's a crucial part. There's also the experience we have as cartoonists in doing the stuff that we do. That's not nothing. So something I like to think about when I'm doing these experiments too is like, what do I enjoy the most? And actually, that's part of the math I'm doing. Like, I actually find that I enjoy doing physical analog watercolor more than digital watercolor. But the choice I have to make is which one's the more expedient one to do. I have to weigh that against what do I enjoy doing. Do I enjoy it so much that like it's critical to like me finishing the book? No, the book I'm thinking about doing is something that's very personal to me and one I've wanted to do for a long time. Well, then I can weigh that in doing my math of which method I'm going to choose. So if you're getting so much pleasure out of doing the book itself anyway, then maybe you can choose a method that's a little less pleasant to you. I wouldn't say unpleasant. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Joseph. Yeah, I mean, for better or worse, shorthand for spooky is Victorian houses, right? And I don't think it's fair because it's like, why don't we have ghost stories that take place in like, oh, it was somebody who, had an injustice happen to them in the 60s and now it's like in the 80s. Well, I suppose somebody has done that. But it's like there's just such a cliche around if it's a spooky haunted house, it has to be like one of those gigantic mansions from like the lumber baron era or something. I think of George C. Scott and the Changeling. How am I doing on time? 43 minutes. So I have about 12 minutes. No, about 18, 17 minutes to finish this. I can do it. I believe in me. All right. We're getting there. If you're enjoying watching this today, please consider hitting like on the video wherever you're watching it. I don't know how it works on Twitch as much. I really appreciate all the input and feedback I get while I'm doing these. It gives me good prompts for thinking aloud about like making art. I like to know what you're interested in knowing. And the links are are they above me on this one? Yeah, they're above me. Okay, so yeah, you hit the heart, it means that you follow me. So if you're not already, you can follow me on Twitch. I'm gonna do cat and cat back there with just no. I'm gonna use these pens. And then you can find everything I make at rss.jdros.com. That aggregates all my stuff into a feed. It's not quite like Linktree. It's not like, oh, here's the links to everything I do. No, it's just a feed of everything I do getting pumped into one space. To fix that. Saucer real quick. And that means that I am not going to watercolor this on paper because I just put a bunch of white out on it. I got a pretty wet brush here, so I'm just doing a bunch of contours, and I'll go in with my dryer brush to do some of the details. $10 to finish. Now this is the speed I should have been working at from the start. This is starting to feel like what I wanted to be doing. I wasn't all fussing over all that stuff. Okay, a little weird bell-faced dude, which I don't know what you are. I think I'm going to do the rest of that one with my dryer brush. All right. Eyeball. Nothing says spooky and weird more than a floating eyeball. I haven't fully unpacked why that is for me, but like when I was a kid and I'd watched like the Twilight Zone, the old Rod Serling Twilight Zone, there's that opening when it would have like the big eyeball float at you and open up. That freaked the living heck out of me. I'm sure it did for a lot of people, but I don't know why that is. Why would that be particularly frightening? Okay, home stretch. How much time I got left? 8 minutes. I'm gonna dry out my brush a little bit on a separate sheet of paper. All right, dry out. Nothing left to add there. Oh, my mummy mouse. Forgot the mummy mouse's bandages. And I was going to do just a tiny bit of. Doesn't feel super dead. Yeah, I think it might be done. Oh, nope, not quite. Got a little bat here. Let's get. I do 56 minutes. 6 minutes to ink one big image of Baron von Bear reading ghost stories, well, spooky stories to his spooky family. So I do these streams Mondays and Thursdays, 10 a.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Central, 7 a.m. Pacific. Some of you are saying good morning. Certainly is the morning for cartoonists wherever you are. And I stream on YouTube, Twitch, and then I save them all at my YouTube, which is just my name, Jersey Drozd. And again, you'd find that if you go to rss.jdrozd.com. Dylan, thank you. That's kind of you. I'm really glad that it turned out okay. So the next step is Thursday. I'm probably going to try to watercolor this in Clip Studio Paint. So if you're interested in watching somebody work in CSP, tune in Thursday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, 9 a.m. Central, 7 a.m. Pacific. Yep. So I'm going to be using those Ray Frendon watercolor brushes to try to make this look like an analog drawing. So thanks again, everybody. Till next time, I have been Jersey Drozd, jdrozd.com, and rss.jdrozd.com. Okay, bye.